All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. How we doing?
Almost weekend, yeah.
It's almost the weekend? Yeah,
Ah,
we're getting there. Thursday's a tough day, though, right? Because it's like almost there, but not
yet.
not yet, not quite. Good morning. Yeah, not quite. I feel it too. It gets harder. It's harder to get out of bed
It's right there.
every day. It's right there. Fridays are right there. Yeah. And you guys get, I think you guys get Wednesday off next week.
Huh?
Get Wednesday
What
off.
about the family?
Because, no, this is a professional development day for teachers. So I'm not quite professional enough yet, so I'm going to go for more training so that when you see me on next Thursday, I will be professional. I will develop my professionalism, or whatever. Yeah, so teachers are doing that, so you guys get the day off. Yeah.
Where's the family then?
That's on the 20-something, right?
22?
It's the Monday, right? 21.
Is it the Monday?
It's the Monday.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you get next week, next Wednesday off, which is the 9th, and then you get the 21st off, which is a Monday. So that'll be a long weekend. Uh-huh. Which is, I think that's kind of the only holiday we have this term, I think.
No, that's the only one.
Yeah. Because then there's Good Friday around Easter, but that's already past classes, so that's
Usually in my country, lunar New Year, take 1 week.
1 week.
It is so good. I love it.
Wow. Same there? Wow.
Watch my sister having holiday.
Wow. This Lunar New Year is a big deal.
Yeah. Really good.
I wonder, because ours is always kind of lumped in with Christmas. So, we get a few days off for Christmas, and then they just kind of extend it into the New Year because they're so close together. But I wonder if we didn't really celebrate Christmas here. I wonder if New Year's would be a bigger holiday. Maybe it would. I don't know. But yeah, wow, whole week, eh? Whole week.
Really good.
Wow. And the New Year was yesterday or the day before?
Yeah.
It was yesterday? That was the first day?
Yeah.
First day was yesterday? Okay. Well, Happy New Year if you celebrate Lunar New Year. Okay, shall we get rolling? Okay, let's get rolling. So, no, there we go. So, yes. Yesterday we were talking about ableism. We defined ableism, a sort of prejudice or a unequal relationship in society between people who are able-bodied and people who are and have disabilities, right? And of course there's all kinds of different disabilities that one might have. It changes your experience of society and kind of what things you struggle with. And interestingly, yesterday we met Adam Pearson, and Adam has yet another kind of disability that we actually didn't put on the list, right? He has a facial disfigurement, right, that affects his vision and might affect his hearing a little bit as well. But that's a big deal as well, right? His face has a lot to do with how people feel about him and how people interact with him, right? I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit. Yeah. So I asked you a whole bunch of questions here about Adam Pearson. Very quickly, what social groups does he belong to? Chen, give me one. Yeah, well, or dominant, whichever. What groups does he belong to as a human?
Disability.
Yeah. So he's a disabled person, right? Or as a person with a disability. Yeah, he fits in that category. Arena, what other category does he fit into?
White male,
Yeah.
British,
Yeah, he's
Male.
Yeah, he's white, he's male, he's British. What else? Maybe Christian. Yeah.
I didn't.
You didn't catch what?
I didn't catch. Is he Christian or not?
I'm kind of. Sorry, go ahead. We're kind of assuming, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't see any evidence of that. Did you? No. We're kind of just making an assumption. Most people in Britain most white people are either Christian or of a Christian background. So I don't know if he's strongly religious, but he kind of comes from that tradition, right? So we're making a little bit of an assumption. We did the same thing with heterosexual, right? We assume he's probably not gay, but we don't know for sure, right? There's no evidence of that either. Cleo, anything we missed on that? He's a disabled person. He's white. He's male. British. Oh, we did miss one thing.
What social group?
Yeah, or socio. What's that? Middle? Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, probably. Anything else that we missed?
I think that's.
It's probably it, right? So. Oh, like money-wise? Yeah. Yeah, probably somewhere middle class, right? Probably not really rich, probably not really poor either. Somewhere in the middle. But of course, and I'm pointing out those because a lot of those group memberships for Adam are dominant groups, right? He actually has a lot of privilege in the society in which he lives, right? And so, his disfigurement has a big effect, right, on how people treat him, right, or how people interact with him. But again, he does have a lot of privilege, right, as a man, as a white man, as a British citizen, right? His life would certainly be different if, he had a face like that, but he was a woman, right, or a person of color, or of a different religion, if he was a Muslim, perhaps, right? That would change how society interacted with him and felt about him, right? And again, I'm not saying that it should. I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying that it would have an effect, right? So we saw a few ways in which people interacted with Adam and with some of the other disabled people in this video. We saw how they were interacted with. We saw Adam on the bus and nobody sat near him, right? I assume he wore his deodorant that day, so I assume it wasn't, that he stunk or anything. It was, they were uneasy, right? They were uneasy about his appearance, right? And we saw a little more when we went to the bar and we met Dan, the sort of ex-soldier in the wheelchair. And, Dan had that interaction with that woman, and she was telling him to do a wheelie and, can't you stand? And those are kind of, pretty insensitive things to say, right? When, nobody uses a wheelchair because it's fun, right? Nobody uses it because they just think it's cool, right? They use it because they need it, right? They need it to move around. And again, she was very comfortable, kind of just being really rude, right? Violating social rules, and I think doing it on camera, right? Like I think the camera was, well, actually, no, I'm not sure. That might have been a hidden camera. But either way, she felt comfortable, not following social norms when interacting with Adam and with Dan, right? And again, we often see that that's the case. People in dominant groups, when they're dealing with minoritized groups, sometimes they feel that they don't have to follow social rules, right? They don't have to, they don't have to treat them with the same kind of politeness as everybody else, right? And again, that's not a conscious thing, right? That's not something that people think about. It's an unconscious thing. Okay. Let me see. You might not have caught this, but number 3, how do Adam and some of these other people that Adam speaks to, how do they kind of deal with prejudicial statements or people being rude or just people kind of overstepping boundaries? Like, how do they deal with that? They talked about it in the bar, but it might have been difficult to hear.
For the guy in a wheelchair, just goes for it. I mean, like the girl.
Yeah.
Told her to stand. If you stand up, I think feel comfortable.
Yeah. Well,
Just dodge the-
he kind of did, right? He kind of, because he could have just said, well, take a hike, lady. Like, you're being rude. You know, you're upsetting me here. You know, get lost. Go bother somebody else, right? Shoo, right? Could have said that, but didn't, right? He kind of like dodged it, right? He sidestepped it, right? He was polite, right? He explained to her that, yeah, I'm using my wheelchair. I have prosthetic legs, right? But, I'm going to have a few beers tonight, and, even with your own legs, after you've had a few beers, sometimes you're a little unstable, and so if you're, if you have prosthetic legs on, it might be really dangerous. So he's using the chair, right? But he explained that all to her, and I don't think, she probably didn't deserve that because she wasn't asking out of concern or interest. She was just kind of being a jerk, right? But yeah, probably a little bit. But he was polite, right? He didn't get upset. He didn't tell her to get lost, right? He was polite to her, right? And he said often that's what he does, right? Either that or he kind of makes a joke, right? He kind of tries to have some fun with it, right? And again, it's, he's doing that to try to not create an awkward situation, but she was being rude, right? And she would have deserved it if he said, you know what, keep walking, lady, right? Like, but he was polite. And often, again, people who are in minoritized groups who have to deal with people not following social rules, saying insensitive things, they tend to have to kind of smile and nod and kind of laugh their way through it, right? Even though it would be justified for them to push back, right? Good morning. Okay, so we just got into we just got to this question here on number 4. Yesterday we got to this question: why are disability hate crimes punished more leniently? Why do you go to jail for less time if you commit a disability hate crime versus a religious hate crime or a racial hate crime? Why do you go to jail for less time? Cleo, what do you think? Okay, that's all right. I think
because they see religious is more important rather than disability as well.
Well, that's clearly that's the message that gets sent by the laws that exist, right? So usually, sometimes laws have sort of recommended or minimum or maximum sentences attached to them, right? So the law is like, you can't do this, right? You're not allowed to do this, and if you're convicted of doing this, the minimum punishment is this, or the maximum punishment is this, right? So there's kind of recommendations in terms of what the judge should do, right? You don't want to shoplift a candy bar and get executed, right? That's not a good punishment for the crime, right? But yeah, the laws are different. Or the recommendations for sentencing are different, right? And so if you assault someone because of their disability, the recommended sentence or punishment is less than if you assault someone of a different religion or race or whatever, right? And so, Chen, you're right. That's what the professor he met with, Mark, whatever his name was, he met with Mark. They had tea by the sea, right? They had tea by the sea, and he said, yeah, like the problem is that if the laws are different, which they are, you're kind of sending the message that some groups are not as important as others, right? Some don't need to be protected, to the same degree, right? And he said, it makes it seem as if those people are less important and less valued, right? So you don't want to do that. If you have people that you feel need to be protected in your society, then you need to protect them equally, right? This unequal thing is no good, but that exists, right? So that's kind of where we were in the documentary, and Adam is just on his way now to see a former Crown Prosecutor. What's a Crown Prosecutor? Kind of a British term, but Crown. Da 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 da. Don't know. Crown Prosecutor. Well, yes. Does anyone? I'm sure we've seen it, but does anyone? You guys have seen like courtroom. Yeah, in movies and TV, right? So there's the judge, of course, right, and then there's the person who's accused, right, and then there's their lawyer, and then on the other side, there's the Crown Prosecutor, right, and the Crown Prosecutor is the lawyer for the state, right? So the lawyer represents the government, the Crown Prosecutor represents the government. He's the one who's pressing the charges, right? So if Chen murders me tomorrow, hopefully not. Hopefully you can at least wait until after the weekend. If he murders me tomorrow, he will hopefully get arrested. He will either have to find a lawyer or they'll give him one, right? And then when Chen goes to trial, his lawyer will defend him, right? His lawyer will try to convince the judge that he didn't do it. But the Crown Prosecutor will be trying to convince the judge that actually, yes, he did do it, right? So there's two lawyers kind of trying to present different arguments, critical thinking, right? Two lawyers trying to present different arguments. The judge will decide which argument is more valid, right? But Crown Prosecutor is the lawyer for the state, right? And they're usually the ones doing the accusing, usually, right? So the Crown Prosecutor will accuse Chen of murder and will try to prove why he did it. Chen's defense lawyer will try to prove try to say that's not true, right? He'll try to provide evidence that shows that he in fact did not kill me. Okay? So anyway, you've probably all seen that in courtroom scenes in movies. Yeah. So the guy he's going to go talk to is a former Crown Prosecutor. Okay? So this used to be his job. Now I think he's got promoted and he has some sort of like oversight role, I think. So he's not actually in the courtroom anymore. But Adam's going to go talk to him and talk a little bit about how disability hate crimes are prosecuted, right? So how they go to trial, how they get punished, or if they get punished, and kind of what's going on, okay? Remind me again what a hate crime is? Yeah. What's a hate crime? We know what a crime is, right?
Something that you hate and you made an action.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Something you hate and that motivates your action, right? So if Chen kills me because I gave him a bad mark on the quiz, not a hate crime. Not cool. Not cool.
And that's not a hate crime?
Not a hate crime.
Because I hate you because you give me a bad mark.
Well, yeah, but usually when we talk about hate crimes, we're talking about kind of like racism or sexism or something. So it could be
What does that call?
so the murder would be aggravated by that fact, right?
That would still call it a hate crime.
No, because there's different kind of degrees of murder, right? So at the lowest degree, it's manslaughter. Okay, so you killed someone, but you didn't really mean to, right? It was an accident. You ran over them with your car, You weren't really paying attention. You weren't trying to kill them. You didn't want to kill them, but you did anyway, right? So that's manslaughter. And then I think you get to, I forget if it's third or second degree murder. The next one up is where you were trying to, oh no, maybe it's third degree murder, where you, don't quote me on any of this, that's probably wrong. Third degree murder is where you killed somebody because you were doing something to them, but you weren't trying to kill them, right? You weren't trying. So there are stories, and not to scare anybody, but it's good to know, of people who punch someone and then they fall, hit their head, and die, right? And so it doesn't happen super often, but it has happened, right? And so that would be a third degree murder. You meant to punch that person. You didn't mean for them to fall. You definitely didn't mean for them to die. You weren't trying to kill them, but now they're dead, right? Second degree murder is where you are trying to kill someone, but it happens without thinking ahead, right? So the husband comes home, discovers his wife in bed with another man, goes crazy with rage and kills the guy. Yeah, second degree murder, right? Definitely meant to kill him, but didn't really plan to, right? Then there's first degree murder where you plan it out, right? You have a plan, you think about it for a long time, and then you follow through with that plan and murder that person. That's first degree. It's premeditated. You thought about it before.
How do you kill a hitman?
What?
Hitman.
Yeah, hitmen would be if you managed to arrest one of them. Yeah, it'd be first degree murder, right? They planned to do it, right? They got the commission, or they got the job. They got hired to do it. They thought about how they were going to do it. They prepared to do it. They went out, did it. Premeditated, right? So that's, and again, as you go up, the punishments are more severe, right? It's a less severe sentence if you punch a guy and he falls and hits his head and dies. That's a totally different thing from, you'd been planning to kill this person for weeks, right? And you'd carefully laid your trap, and then you lured them into it and killed them, right? That's a totally different thing, right? So I know this is a bit of a tangent, but anyway, there's different levels, right? So where did this all start? Oh yeah, Chen had murdered me, right? I guess it would depend, right, when he murdered me, because if he saw his quiz and he was like, what? And then he pulled out a knife and stabbed me, that might be second degree murder, right? Because he hadn't really planned it out beforehand, but he just had an emotional reaction, flew off the handle and murdered me, right? But if he saw his quiz and he was like, oh, I'm gonna get him, right? And he planned it all out, right? He planned out when I would be alone and nobody would be around, and he'd be able to kill me slowly, painfully, right? That'd be first degree murder.
I didn't know there's a grade with that.
You didn't know what?
I didn't know there's a grade in terms of killing.
Yeah, because again, people are killed by people, but it does make a difference whether, it's an accident and you didn't, it's your fault, but you weren't trying to hurt anyone, or if you tried to hurt them and they just accidentally died, or if you were trying to kill them, but, you just freaked out and flew into a rage, or if you actually thought it out and planned it out, right? Those are different things. So they get punished a little bit differently. Although if you kill someone, you're going to jail. Yeah, for a while, right? Even if it's an accident, you're in trouble. Okay, anyway, that was a long rambling tangent, but there you go. So the moral is, don't kill people, right? It's not cool, and you will go to jail. Okay. So let's continue watching this. The link and the questions are in Microsoft Teams if you're at home. We'll start watching, and I think we'll watch. Let's watch another
30 minutes?
Let's watch the rest. Let's watch the rest because I think if we do another 25 minutes, then there'll be like 6 minutes left, which is not worth it. So people who are at home, let's just power through the rest. We watched about, oh no, we watched 35 minutes yesterday, didn't we? Didn't we watch 25 and then we watched 10? Yeah, we did, right?
I know is when we reach the, I don't know, the loyalty.
Yeah. Okay. So, actually, yeah. So we've actually watched 35 minutes of this. So we'll start at 35 minutes and we'll watch to the end, okay? Then we'll have a break. Then we'll talk about this. Coolio? Okay, let's do it. Online people, will see you in just a little bit. Self. Okay, and we're back. So the question number 5 here is probably maybe one of the more complicated questions that I've asked you here. But what's going on? There's three reasons why disability hate crimes aren't kind of prosecuted as they should be. What's the first reason?
Or is it too embarrassed to ask people with disabilities?
Yeah, right? Police are kind of reluctant to ask about people's disabilities. They're a little embarrassed, right? And again, that's not great, right? That's an issue. But I think that kind of makes sense because, correct me if I'm wrong here, but at least in my culture, like when someone has a disability or something like that, we're kind of socialized not to draw attention to it, right? You're not supposed to, if you meet someone in a wheelchair, you're not supposed to say, hey, you're in a wheelchair, right? You're not supposed to point it out, right? You're supposed to just, basically pretend it's not there, right? And interact with them as a person, which is good, right? Which is good. But we're kind of taught not to make a big deal about people's differences or disabilities, right? We're supposed to just kind of pretend it's not there, right? Pretend we don't notice it. And so the police, even though, this is still not a good thing, this is a problem, the police are kind of they've been socialized just like everybody else, right? And so they're not asking about people's disabilities because subconsciously they're thinking, oh, well, that's not very polite, so I'm not going to do that. But in this situation, that's a problem, right? Police don't ask about people's disabilities, and so it doesn't get recorded in the police report, right? What's the second part?
Kind of like about the law thing.
The whole what thing?
The law.
The law thing?
Is it not?
Yeah. I need a little more precision than the law thing,
That is specific.
but it's complicated, I know. So it had to do with crown prosecutors, right? So I'm going to help you out. Crown prosecutor, of course, is in charge of, they're responsible for charging the accused, right? So if Chen murders me, or if I die suspiciously, the police will pick up Chen, right? They'll bring him downtown, they'll write up a police report, and they'll charge him, right? And it's up to the Crown prosecutor to determine what the charge will be, right? And so the Crown prosecutor will look at the evidence, he'll look at the police report and say, what am I going to charge this guy with? Is it manslaughter? Is it third-degree murder? Second? First? What do I charge him with, right? That's the Crown prosecutor's job, is to figure out what this person should be charged with, right? But there's a bit of a problem, right? Because if the police aren't recording information about someone's disability, what's going to happen when it comes to the Crown prosecutor? Are they going to charge someone with a hate crime? No, right? Because, yeah, there's no real evidence that that's what it is, right? It's just an assault, right? Or it's just whatever it is, but it's not a hate crime. And then, of course, the trial happens and the judge goes to pass a sentence, but judges can only convict people for things they're charged with, right? So again, if, let's see, David, for instance, if David gets caught shoplifting and the police arrest him and they charge him with shoplifting and it goes to trial, the judge can't say, David, I convict you of murder in the first degree. He can't do that, right? Because that's not what he was charged with. He was charged with shoplifting, right? He was charged with theft under $1,000. That's all the judge can convict him of. The judge can't convict him of charges that things that he's not accused of, right? And similarly, if David is going to trial for shoplifting, he can't be sentenced to life in prison, right? Because that's not an appropriate sentence for shoplifting, right? he'll be given a punishment that is on par with the crime he's committed, right? So you can see the problem, right? If police don't record that someone has a disability and that it was a factor in the crime, then the Crown Prosecutor can't charge anyone with a hate crime because they don't have any evidence that a hate crime occurred, right? Because there's no information on this person's disability. And therefore, when the judge goes to punish this person, they can't punish them for a long period, right? They can't punish them as a hate crime because that's not the charge that's before them. The charge that's before them is an assault, right? So the person's going to get less punishment because all the way along, this person's disability is not factored into what's happening in the court, right? So there's three things. The police aren't recording disability information. The Crown Prosecutor isn't charging people with a hate crime, and therefore the judge can't convict them of one, right? You can't be convicted of murder if you're charged with shoplifting, right? It doesn't work that way. So we have kind of a three-step problem here. Now, I'm going to ask you to kind of think outside the box here, which I don't really like that thing. What does it mean to think outside the box?
Widely.
Widely, right? Not in the usual way, right? And so how do we describe that? With a cliche, right? And a cliche is like the literal definition of thinking inside the box, so I don't know. Anyway, I think it's weird. Whatever, it's just me. So, think outside the box here. Why else might a Crown Prosecutor not want to charge someone with a hate crime? Why might they just want to charge someone with a regular crime? Those of you who watch courtroom dramas, this might help, or you might...
Objection.
What?
Objection.
Objection, Your Honor.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't think it's that dramatic in real court, but it's awesome on TV, right? Objection, Your Honor. Conjecture. Sustained. Cleo, what do you think? Why might a Crown Prosecutor not want to? Why would they not want to charge someone with a hate crime and just charge them with a regular crime?
Because the police investigation not reach,
Even if they kind of thought maybe even if the Crown Prosecutor kind of knew that the person had a disability, why might they want to charge them with just a regular crime? This is a tricky... Arena, what do you think? It's okay. I think you're going in the right direction. Maybe it's more work. Okay.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, why might a Crown Prosecutor charge someone with just a regular crime rather than charging them with a hate crime?
I think the Crown Prosecutor also has to look the police investigation.
Yeah.
But instead, the police investigation feel embers and doesn't reach the
True, right? There might not be enough
evidence.
right? Actually, and that's part of it too. Might be too much work, might not be enough evidence. Help me out here, out of the box thinkers.
No
No
witness.
witnesses. No, that's part of your plan to kill me. You said the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet. Okay. So you're kind of in the ballpark here, but the Crown Prosecutor's job, of course, is to charge people, but it's also to make sure they get convicted, right? So if the state is going to charge someone, they want them to be punished, right? So the Crown Prosecutor is going to look, they're like, yes, I have enough evidence, I think I can bring this to trial and I can get it convicted, right? And Crown Prosecutors want convictions, right? The more convictions they have, the better lawyers they are, and the more they'll rise up, right? So when they get in the courtroom, they want to send you to jail. That's their job. Their job is to send you to jail. Your defense lawyer, of course, his job is to keep you out of jail. Right? So he's going to try to send you to jail. Now, the problem with hate crimes is that a crime has occurred, right? So let's say somebody punched Adam Pearson, okay? Out in the street, you know, maybe it's in the evening, maybe it's Friday night, people are out having fun, having drinks, going to clubs. Adam's walking down the street, bam, somebody punches him right in the face, right? The police catch him, take him downtown, interview him. But the problem with a hate crime is that it's the intent that makes a difference, right? So what's the crime? Well, this guy punched Adam in the face, right? But the hate crime has to do with why he did it, right? Did he do it because of Adam's appearance? Did he do it because of Adam's disability? Or did he do it for another reason? Was he just angry and he just lashed out at the first person he saw? Did Adam, sleep with his girlfriend? I don't know. Did Adam owe him money and then didn't pay him back? Who knows, right? And so it's always easier to prove what happened rather than why it happened, okay? And so if the charge is assault, this guy walked up and punched Adam in the face, that's easier to prove, right? Maybe we have witnesses, we have security camera footage, we have Adam's, swollen face, right? We have this guy's bruised knuckles, right? We have clear evidence that this happened. We may not know why it happened, but it doesn't matter, right? Because we can prove that this guy assaulted Adam Pearson. We have evidence. He's getting convicted. But if we try to make it a hate crime, what we're saying to the judge or jury is, this man punched Adam Pearson in the face because of his disability. And if the judge doesn't believe that, then that guy is getting off. He's not going to get convicted, right? We not only have to prove the crime occurred, but we have to prove why it occurred. And that's more difficult, right? If Chen murders me, I know I set it up as if, I gave him a bad mark on the quiz and he murdered me. But if he murdered me, it might be difficult to know why, right? Was it the quiz mark? Was it something I said to him in class? Is Chen a crazy person? Was I trying to blackmail Chen and he decided to end me instead? Do I owe him money and I didn't pay him back? Who knows, right? There could be all kinds of things, but it doesn't matter, right? And so often people will be charged with a slightly lesser offense because it's easier to prove, right? And so, for instance, Chen might have been thinking about killing me for weeks, okay? He might have been turning it over in his head, right? Creating a plan, right? And finally he killed me, right? But if the police can't find any evidence of that plan, it wouldn't be a good idea to charge him with first-degree murder, because that charge implies that he planned it out. And if there's no evidence of that plan, it's not first-degree murder, right? What's easier to prove is maybe second-degree murder, right? He meant to kill me, but there's no real evidence that he planned it out first. And he might have, but if we can't prove that, we're going to back off a little bit and we're just going to charge him with second degree. We think he planned it out, but if we can't prove it, it's easier to convict him of a lesser charge. Because we know... How do you prove that what?
Someone is planned it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You need evidence, right? Maybe text messages or emails, or, maybe he killed me with some sort of poison and we check his browser history and he's been looking up poisons for months. I don't know, right? So if we don't have that, then it's easier to charge him with a lesser crime, because that's where we'll get the conviction, right? For those of you in my history class, gangster Al Capone, right? He was around during Prohibition in the 1930s. He was head of a gang that was selling all kinds of illegal alcohol. He was making illegal alcohol and selling it. He was ordering the murders of other gang members. He was a criminal, right? But the police couldn't find any evidence. They couldn't charge him with any of that because they knew he was doing it. They knew it was him, but they couldn't find the evidence. And you know what they finally charged him with? Tax evasion. He didn't pay his taxes. That's what he went to jail for. Because again, you can have a good feeling about something, but if you can't prove it and you take it to court, you risk the person being found not guilty, right? So if you want to catch bad people, you have to charge them with things that you know you can convict them of, things that you know will stick, right? And so for Capone, even though, you know, he was probably guilty of all kinds of crimes, the only thing that they could really prove was that he wasn't paying his taxes. And they nailed him. They sent him to jail for tax evasion, right? He was guilty of all kinds of other stuff, probably, but with no evidence, there's nothing you can do, right? So there's something else going on here too, right? Police aren't recording or asking questions about people's disabilities. Prosecutors aren't charging people with hate crimes, and then judges can't convict people of hate crimes if they're not charged, right? And sometimes it has to do with the information police collect, but sometimes it has to do with charging people with hate crimes on its own, because it's hard to prove why people did something. It's much easier to prove what they did, right? And again, if you get the what, the why doesn't matter, right? So if Chen murders me, they'll probably charge him with second-degree murder, because even though they think he planned it out, maybe they can't prove it, right? And if they charge him with first-degree murder and the judge doesn't buy it, he's going to go free, and my murder will go unavenged, right? So they'll probably step it back, knowing that, yes, it's a slightly lesser charge, but they know they can make it stick, right? They know they can send Chen to jail for that. So that's kind of the problem with hate crimes too. If you can't prove that's the reason why someone did something, it's dangerous to try, right? Because there's a chance that they'll be set free, right? The judge will say, no, I don't think this is a hate crime. I don't think this was motivated by Adam's disability. Not guilty. Right? So Crown prosecutor has to be very careful about what they charge people with. Right? So again, there's something else going on there too, I think. Okay, so there's three things, but there's also kind of a fourth thing, in that, you know, police don't record, prosecutors don't charge, judges can't convict. But prosecutors can't charge, or prosecutors don't want to charge hate crimes unless they can really prove that that's what it was. And again, sometimes it's tough to know why people do things, right? Especially, you know, if someone just walks up and punches Adam in the face, who knows why he did it, right? If he doesn't say why he's doing it, tough to prove, right? Really tough to prove. So when he's at the movie theater, what are they talking about? Stereotypical and prejudicial ideas about people with disfigurements. What do they say?
Is it a test?
No, he's at the movie theater. He's talking to people outside the theater. And he's saying, "Hey, what does a villain look like? What does the bad guy look like?"
Oh.
Yeah. Right? How many movie villains or television villains or whatever, how many bad guys are disfigured, right? Are ugly in some way? Most, right? I don't know who, Voldemort, right? Yeah, well, he is, right? He's not a good-looking dude, right? It's kind of weird. Darth Vader from Star Wars, if you ever see the helmet come off, he got burned. Yeah, he got burned. Two-Face from Batman, the Joker from Batman.
Joker is kind of a cool guy.
He's kind of a cool guy?
Yeah.
Which one? Which Joker?
After the 2000 years, every version of Joker, they all look
They're all good. So like Jared Leto's version and Joaquin Phoenix and
Yeah, they are so cool.
so cool, hey? All right, interesting. But disfigured in some way, right? Or Heath Ledger. Sorry, of course I got to remember Heath Ledger. That was incredible. That was. I remember the first time watching that movie, I was so uneasy. Whenever he was on screen, he was so good. He was so good. But yeah, lots of villains are ugly, right? And not just like regular ugly, but like disfigured, monstrously ugly, right? And again, there's that, this is kind of an underlying stereotype, right? We look at some hideously deformed person on the screen and we're like, oh, that must be the bad guy, right? James Bond is good for this too, right? There's been many James Bond villains who have had scars or burns or some sort of thing, right? And then when we see the really handsome person, we're like, oh, there's the good guy, right? The good guy is always handsome, or the good girl, the heroine, is always beautiful. The bad guy is always unattractive, often, unless he's really attractive, like Lucifer or something, right? So, yeah, these stereotypes occur in movies all the time, and we really don't question them, do we? Right? We don't really question them. But again, that's going to have an effect on Adam's life, because we're all kind of internalizing a stereotype of, disfigured people being bad or evil or weird in some way, right? And so even if people aren't thinking it consciously, they're seeing Adam in the street and they're like, oh, must be weird or bad, right? And we even saw it in that psychological test, right? People were a little unsure, right? They were staying away from him, right? There was a lot of distance between them and him. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. There's a comfortable distance to stand when you're talking to someone, right? If it's someone you know intimately, right? Like boyfriend, girlfriend, family member, you tend to stand close, right? If you don't know them very well, you tend to stand a little further away. But if your stereotypes are activated and you're kind of fearful of this person, you're going to stand even further. And I think those people were standing a lot further away than one might normally, right? I would say probably almost double the distance, right? And again, it had to do with how he looked, and some of those stereotypes are reinforced by media, right? Reinforced by film, by TV. I often leave out comics and graphic novels and anime, but I probably shouldn't leave those things out because they can be, they can transmit social messages very well as well, right? Okay, so the psychological test, right, with, they've got 10 participants. They don't really know why they're there at first. And of course, the point is to test whether you can change people's prejudices towards people with disfigurements, right? So they do a test on the computer. It's designed to make sure that they can't fake the results, right? They can't get the result that they want, right? And so, again, I'm not really sure how this works, but a psychologist could tell you how it works. And again, they all have reasonably high levels of bias or prejudice towards people with disfigurements, except one guy, right? What was his deal?
He's experienced.
Yeah, he had experience with people with disfigurements. What did he do before? The white guy with the long hair.
Got a low score.
Yeah, he got a really low score first time, and he said, I've done care work in the past, right? So he's been a support worker for people with disabilities or disfigurements, right? So he's been around people who look this way, right? And it's not a big deal for him, and he tested low, but everyone else tested quite high, right? So they go downstairs, they meet with Adam, chat with him for a while. They get to see that he is the world's worst Jenga player. And then they go back upstairs and do the test again, and what happens?
Kind of low.
Yeah, people's people's subconscious prejudice has been reduced, right? And so this goes back to that article we read. How do you reduce prejudice? Well, you get people to interact with each other, right? You kind of get people to mix in and cooperate, right? Maybe playing a game of Jenga or something, right? And again, it's a small study. There's only 10 people. You know, it probably took an hour, if that, right? But it seemed to have had an effect on people, right? Even just that little amount of mixing together made a difference, right? It changed those people's prejudicial ideas, right? Quite a bit. And you can imagine if they spent more time with him, probably more so. One more thing before I let you go, because we're out of time. Did you find, like when we first started watching that documentary, Adam's face was kind of stunning, right? Like you really noticed it, right? And that's fair. It's a very different face, right? So you really noticed it. But did you find as we continued to watch, it was like not a big deal anymore? Yeah. You just kind of like, okay, that's his face. And then you kind of get to know him, right? And I think one of the test subjects, Amir said that too, right? He was like, yeah, I just started building a different mental picture of him. At first it was kind of like all his face, right? That's kind of all I could see. And then after a little while, I kind of forgot about that, and I was, you know, seeing him as a normal person, right? And he kind of is, isn't he? Seems like a pretty, with the exception of the face, he's a pretty normal person, right? There's nothing kind of different about him, I would say. Okay, I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. I'm going to stop it there. We're going to come back to this and review tomorrow, and then I've got a couple of other things to show you, okay? So that is it. Pack it up. I will see you tomorrow. Have a nice afternoon. Stay warm, stay dry, stay COVID-free. Hakuna Matata. Dos vidania. See you later. Bye.